All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to finish out 10-7 with period and horizontal shifts. So we're going to start with the period shifts. Notice I've gotten some pre-notes in there for you guys. So let's go into those. So we're going to recall the fact that this is our setup standard form for sine and cosine. If we are looking for the period, so how far it takes to repeat a cycle, we're looking for t is going to be our period. This is radians, this is degrees. Okay, so to get the other points, you have to find the median and the quartile values. All you have to do in order to get that is to divide the period by 4. Okay, so the big hint we want to make sure that we focus on is going to be, you can use this inequality here in order for you to find the beginning part of the period. Okay, and so then we're going to solve this for x, and we're going to think compound inequalities when we do that, because compound inequalities are the ones where we're going to move everything out of the middle to just get x in the middle. So let's go at it. Okay, so we're going to start right here. On the side over here, I gave you an outline of what the quartiles look like just generally. So Q1, Q2, Q3, that's all for this first graph, okay? And so the start of our period is going to be 0, and the end would be 2 pi, okay? Because that's a full revolution around the unit circle. So what we're going to look at for this one is, we're going to set this up as the center of our inequality. So we're going to go 0 is less than or equal to 2x, which is less than or equal to 2 pi. Now that we have that set up, we're going to think like an inequality, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to get rid of the 2. I need to have x by itself in the middle. So I'm going to divide everything by 2. Well, that's just going to be 0 because we can't divide from 0. That's going to be just x now. And then this is going to be just pi. That means the first time my sine graph crosses or touches the, or crosses or goes above the x-axis, so our center right there, our 0 here, is going to be at pi. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to graph our parent function. Our parent function is just the regular sine graph. So that's going to be, we have 1 above, -1 below. We're going to start here at 0 because the graph of sine always starts at 0. Then we're going to go at pi halves 1, at pi 0, at 3 pi halves -1, and at 2 pi 0. This is the graph of our parent function, okay? So now that we have our parent function graph, now we're going to graph this new one. So it says well, that's not quite our period yet. We need to divide it by 4. So we're going to take this here, and I'm going to divide it by 4. So pi divided by 4. So my period divided by 4. So my first time it's going to cross is pi 4, which means the end of my period, so the end where I have to complete an entire cycle, is pi right here. That means my graph has to do this up, down, up, all by pi for this graph. So the first time it's going to touch or go above is going to be pi 4. So let's graph it. I'm going to graph this one in pink. So it's going to start here at 0 because that's what sine does. Then at pi 4, I'm going to go to 1 above the line, which means the next time it has to touch is pi halves. So Q1, Q2, Q3. So then I'm going to take pi halves, I'm going to touch. 3 pi 4ths, I'm going to go below at -1. And then at pi, I'm going to go on my line, which means my entire sine graph for this one is completing an entire cycle before or at the halfway point of the first one, the parent function. So my blue is my parent function, which is y is equal to sine of x, while the pink is my new function, which is y is equal to sine of 2x. Now we have both graphs. So let's do cosine. So with this cosine, the only difference is the fact that this has a 1/2. So instead of doing 2x in the middle, it's going to be 1/2 x. So 0 is less than or equal to 1/2 x, which is less than or equal to 2 pi. Okay, so now I need to get rid of the 2 here. So that means I have to multiply by 2, and I'm multiplying everything by 2. That's just going to go away. It's going to stay 0. These 2's are going to cancel out, so all I have left is x is less than or equal to. Well, 2 times 2 gives me 4 pi. That means an entire cycle for my cosine is going to end at 4 pi, which means in order to get one of my periods, I need to take 4 pi and divide it by 4, which means my resulting is just going to be pi. That's the first time my graph is going to cross and or touch the the x-axis, sorry. So that's here. Awesome. So let's graph our first cosine function. Our y is equal to cosine of x is going to be our blue. So we have 1 above, -1 below. Cosine starts off the line at 1. At pi halves, it goes to 0. At pi, it goes to -1. At 3 pi halves, it goes to 0. And at 2 pi, it goes to 1. Now I'm going to put in my dots. Show my outline. Okay. All right, so now I have my original parent function. Now I'm going to do my new function here. And so I'm going to graph that one in pink. And so this says at pi is the first time it's going to cross or touch that graph. So I know cosine starts at 1. So then that means at pi, it's 0. So that means at 2 pi, because that's the next pi value. So that means at 2 pi, it's going to be -1. So then I'm going to continue, my line. And we see that this doesn't cycle completely at 2 pi. So our Q1 is equal to pi. Our Q2 is equal to 2 pi. Q3 would then be 3 pi. Notice we're going by pi. Notice up here, we went by fourths, because pi halves is the same as 2 pi fourths. Okay, so there we go, all set for those ones. So let's look at our next one. Okay, phase shift. This deals with the C value, so this deals inside our equation. And this is going to shift the graph left or right. So this is when it's added or subtracted, not multiplied. We were looking at multiplied in this one. Okay, so we were looking at the period. We were looking at multiplication on that one. This one we're looking at adding or subtracting. So let's rock out. So I'm going to set this up using my inequality here. Notice 0 and 2 pi stay the same. And then we're going to solve for x. Let's go. So I'm going to use the blue to start with. And I'm going to say 0 is less than or equal to x minus pi halves, which is less than 2 pi. Okay? So now I'm going to add pi halves. Oh, well, let's change colors. Okay, choose green. I'm going to add pi halves everywhere. Pi halves, pi halves. Okay, here I now have pi halves is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to, note here, I cannot just add these together. They have to have the same denominator, which is a 2. So this becomes 4 pi halves so that I can add it together, which is going to leave me with 5 pi halves. So this end term here is 5 pi halves. So now in order to get my ending or my periods, because I know where it ends at. It ends at 5 pi halves. But now I need to know what my period is. So I'm going to divide the 5 pi halves by 4. Since I'm dividing by 4, I don't want to have to I don't want to have to do the fraction part, which I'm going to, but I don't want to, so we're going to do it anyway, just so you know you're not the only ones who don't want to do stuff. Okay, so we're going to take 5 pi halves. So this is this is the end. This is going to be our period. And this is where we start. Okay, so that means we're skipping. So we're going to look at that one. Oh. Pi halves. Pi. 3 pi halves. 2 pi. So if we're looking at our values, we start off with pi halves. Then we're going to say we end up with 2 pi halves. Then we're at 3 pi halves. Then we're at 4 pi halves. Then we're at 5 pi halves. This is the way you get around dividing that 5 pi halves by 4. So now I have 5 of them. This is where I start. That's where I end. These are my middles. Well, this is just pi, because the 2's will cancel. This is 3 pi halves. This is just 2 pi. So now that we see that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to graph my original sine function. I'm going to graph that in blue. So that's 1 above, -1 below. Start on the line, 1 above, to the line, 1 below, on the line. Original sine function. Now I'm going to graph this one. So it starts, oh shoot. So it's going to start, we're going to graph in pink. It's going to start right here. There's my on the line. Then at pi, I'm going to go 1 above. At 3 pi halves, I'm going to go on the line. And at 2 pi, I'll be below. Let me go back. Oh, goodness gracious, that line is ugly. Okay, last try. There we go. Okay, so now looking at this last one, we are going to do same thing we did, same setup we started with. So we're going to go with the blue. So I'm going to do 0 is less than or equal to, this time it's what's in this box. So x plus pi fourths is less than or equal to 2 pi. I'm going to subtract pi fourths. Oh shoot, wrong color. Green. Okay, I'm going to subtract pi fourths, and that's just so you guys can see the difference. Okay, this is going to become negative pi fourths. is less than or equal to x, because those cancel, which is less than or equal to, remember this 2 pi has to have a denominator of 4. So this 2 pi becomes 8, oh shoot, becomes 8 pi fourths. So I'm going to take 8 pi fourths, and I'm going to subtract pi fourths from it, and I'm going to end up with 7 pi fourths. Now that I have 7 pi fourths, and I know where it starts at, so that means this is going to be my period. Okay, here we go. Oops, this one. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, I'm going to start this time. This is my start. Okay, so I'm going to start at negative pi fourths. Then I'm going to go to pi fourths. So 1 pi fourths, 2 pi fourths, 3 pi fourths, 4 pi fourths, 5 pi fourths, 7 pi fourths. Okay, this becomes pi, oh shoot. This becomes pi, can't read it, sorry. Okay, this becomes pi fourths. This becomes pi. That stays, that stays. Okay, so we don't need pi because our cycle is 2 pi. So this one we don't need. All the rest of them we need. Okay, here we go. Let's graph our original function. We're going to graph it in blue. So 1 above, negative 1 below. Cosine starts above the line up here. Then it goes 0. Then it goes negative 1. Then it goes 0. Then it goes 1. Okay, there's our original cosine function. And what I mean by that is this is the parent function y is equal to cosine of x. Okay, so now let's graph the one that we just got. So we're still going to start off the line, only this time it says we're starting at pi 4, negative pi 4. So I'm going to start up here at negative pi fourths at 1. Then it's going to come down and it's going to cross, because the next thing it does, it crosses at pi fourths here. Then it's going to go, the next value we have right here, 3 pi fourths, it's going to go right here to negative 1. Then we're going to go at 5 pi fourths on the line. And at 7 pi fourths, we're going to go above the line. Here is the cosine function they gave us. So this cycle completes. This is the end of the cycle, and it completes before 2 pi. Okay, I'm going to erase out the pi because we didn't need it. And we're all set on that one. So I'm going to zoom back out to full page. There we go. And slide up. Okay, multiple transformations. I'm going to, because we've done a couple of these, and this time it's just doing more than one thing at a time, I'm going to quick check you on those guys because it's going to be a separate video anyway. And then this is your attempt to try your skills. Then I'm going to go ahead and see you guys next video.